the end.
When it comes to shows that have gone downhill, especially in the realm of cartoons, it always comes back to the big three, or as I like to call it, the unholy trinity: The Simpsons, Family Guy, and SpongeBob. Aside from their downfall, there is one other thing that they all have in common. They all have had various video games. But for now, let's stick to the 6th gen realm, because each franchise has had at least one noteworthy 6th gen game. For Simpsons, it's Simpsons Hit and Run. For SpongeBob, it's Battle for Bikini Bottom. And for Family Guy, the subject for today's video, the Family Guy video game. Developed by High Voltage Software and published by 2K Games, this game was released on October 17, 2006 for North America, 9 days later for Europe, and November 3, 2006 in Australia for the PS2 and Xbox. A PSP version was released on the same day as its console counterparts in North America and Australia, but it didn't come out in Europe until December 1st, 2006. Take-Two Interactive, the company who owns 2K, actually acquired the rights to the Family Guy license before the show came back on the air in 2005. It wasn't until March of 2006 when the game revealed itself, and then it was released on those days that I mentioned beforehand. Let's see how it turned out. The game's story consists of 3 stories representative of the 3 characters you will play as from the Griffin family: Stewie, Brian, and Peter. Stewie's story has him trying to foil his evil half-brother Bertram's plan for world domination after Stewie's plans go awry. This happens because Stewie ends up blowing up his own mind control ray he was going to use with Peter's satellite dish in addition to the dish itself, being tricked by Bertram. Meanwhile, Brian is once again accused of impregnating Seabreeze, matched to Peter Schmidt's prize-winning dog. After a joke at Joe's expense, Brian sneaks off and is now hunting for evidence to clear his name. Finally, Peter, after getting knocked in the head by the satellite dish that Stewie blew up earlier, is now convinced that Mr. Belvedere, the butler from the sitcom of the same name, is out to get him by allegedly kidnapping his family, and he's somehow convinced that the townspeople of Quahog are Mr. Belvedere's henchmen. Yeah, that bonk must have done some major damage to his head. Anyways, the plot itself pretty much plays out like an episode of the show, with some overlapping here and there, mostly between Peter and Stewie. The thing that makes the Family Guy video game stand out from its other 6th gen contemporaries is that rather than one gameplay style, this game uses multiple gameplay styles, one for each of the playable characters across 22 levels, 8 for Peter and Stewie, and 6 for Brian. Stewie's levels are a mix of shoot-em-ups like Galaga or Galaxian, but there's also some platforming sections, kind of like the Futurama video game that came out 3 years prior to this game. You'll work your way from one end of the level to the other, doing platforming and the occasional puzzle. Some puzzles even involve the use of mind control. Only a few times it will lock you into moving like you would in Galaga. You can also collect parts to upgrade the laser gun, and there's a skyhook in certain parts of the levels that are used to reach higher places. Brian's levels are stealth levels similar to games like Splinter Cell and Metal Gear Solid. You must avoid onlookers by hiding in the shadows and avoid being seen. Disguises can be occasionally used to blend in, and sometimes Brian must avoid his natural dog urges to urinate on objects by avoiding them where applicable, or he'll be detected. Finally, Peter's gameplay resembles beat-em-ups like Final Fight and Streets of Rage. You'll go from one end of the level to the other while beating up anyone in your way. As you keep moving, Peter can collect snacks to increase his special move meter. With a full meter, you can do a move that can take down multiple enemies at once. Also, Peter will adopt certain personas at times depending on the level, beginning and ending the game as himself. This is kind of a mismatch of throw whatever at the wall and see what sticks. Each of the 3 styles, at times, while they work, they each have their own problems. Some of the platforming in Stewie's sections of the game can be pretty tricky to navigate, and some of the puzzles can get too confusing at times. Furthermore, enemy count in a couple of the sections where you actually go in Peter can get quite overwhelming at times, as enemies just never seem to stop pouring in depending on where you are in the game. Brian's sections are marred by a stealth system that really has no rhyme or reason at times. Going by G-Man Lives' idea of a good stealth system being one you get the hang of after a while, that's not really the case here. While disguises work, there's still quite a bit of trial and error, like the frustrating stuntman, and you really have to hightail it through some of those sections. Peter's sections are probably the most consistent section in the entire game that works the best. They're straightforward and work as they should, though there are some tough sections like the other two characters, and combos are a bit difficult to pull off. Even with these flaws, everything is mostly enjoyable as it can be. When the gameplay works, there is fun to be had, but you may have to occasionally slog through a mess section. Controls at least work fine. Characters are responsive as they should be, and button inputs come in fine for the most part, though I wish there was an auto fire in Stewie's section. The humor does help to lighten things through the tough sections and the sections in the game in general. It's the usual humor you would expect from Family Guy. Dark humor, a touch of gross out, and there's even quite a bit of meta humor. Like, there is some serious fourth wall breaking that would make Pinkie Pie and Deadpool blush. Like, the characters acknowledge they're in a video game at times, the fact that Mr. Belvedere's a Fox-produced show, and aired on ABC because Fox Network didn't exist at the time, which I never realized until I got to that point, and other things like that that I will leave you to find out on your own. The main humor of Family Guy, though, the cutaways, are represented in the most interesting way. Minigames. At certain points, the character will initiate a cutaway the way they do in the show, and then you'll be taken to the cutaway to play it. For example, the first cutaway has you nailing a hook to the wall to put up a sky hook, while the guy who's holding the hook up gets nailed to the wall. There's plenty more where that came from, and they're pretty funny in their own way. The humor of the show is well represented, and it keeps the mood going well. It helps that it, along with the story, were done by 3 longtime writers of the show: Steve Callaghan, Kirk Butler, and Patrick Meighan. To keep the look and feel of the show well intact, the graphics are cel-shaded like many other cartoon games. While some things aren't too detailed, nothing looks out of place. The show's environments look as they should, and the fans will probably be more than likely feel right at home in Quahog's video game representation. Sound is also pretty good as well. The music was done by longtime series composer / Seth MacFarlane collaborator Walter Murphy. All the familiar motifs and riffs are there, and it translates like it was straight from the show. The sound effects are also well done. Nothing sounds out of place, and everything also feels like it could be lifted from the show. The voice acting is also pretty good. All the main cast from the show reprise their roles for the game: Seth MacFarlane, Alex Borstein, Seth Green, Mila Kunis, etc. The transition from voice acting in the show to voice acting in the game didn't have too much loss in translation, and it still sounds good as a result. Though replayability really isn't there once you finish the game. You can replay the cutaways, but there's no real reason to do so. You can also go back for any missed upgrades in Stewie's parts, but again, there isn't much of a reason to do so. The gun will probably be upgraded enough by that point. The Family Guy video game is a decent game. The mishmash style of a game, while successful at recreating the feeling of watching an interactive episode, itself leads to a mixed game. While the gameplay for each section plays fine, controls well, looks and sounds good, there are some mess sections across the game, some control problems that, while they don't hamper the game, they do bring it a notch back from being a great game, and there's not much in terms of replayability. It seems as if the game needed a bit more time in the oven before being released. If you are a big Family Guy fan and you haven't played this game, you'll probably enjoy it. Non-fans may proceed with caution. I give Family Guy, the video game, a 3 out of 5. Thanks for watching. If you like what you saw, click the big red button below to subscribe. Check out the other links in the description for more cool stuff, and check out the playlist on screen for more content. See you in the next video.